oftentimes the judge will hit court costs on each of those charges, even though it's one stop. So $109 court cost for one charge, they'll hit them with another one. That's another $190. People end up with $1,000 worth of tickets in one stop.
Eddie Burkhalter is here from Alabama Appleseed. He is the author of a recent report that they put out, Taken for a Ride. And Eddie's going to talk to us about it. Eddie, I appreciate you taking the time this morning to talk to us. Welcome to the program.
Thanks so much, Jacob. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'll tell you a little bit about the report if you'd like, and then we can discuss. So the idea behind the report was if you kept up with the reporting on Brookside that showed, that detailed the really aggressive police tactics of that little town just north of Birmingham, it was egregious, probably the most egregious example of over-policing, over-ticketing, just meant for the purpose of raising revenue. And so what we wanted to look at was what's going on in municipal courts throughout the state. Are we going to see sort of the similar kinds of things in smaller degrees? And so we set out to do that. We spent about a year visiting multiple municipal courts, seeing how their outcomes played, what sort of policing decision has resulted in those outcomes. And what we saw wasn't really surprising. We kind of expected to see it. And what we saw was that more often than not, traffic ticket fines and fees disproportionately impact people of color and low-income drivers. Time and time again, I would sit in court and see, folks who just could not afford to pay their tickets. That's the only reason they were there in court. If you could pay your ticket, you did. You don't have to go to court in most instances. But if you can't pay your ticket, you end up in court, and you're really at the whim of judges to determine whether or not they're going to put you on payment plans or whether they're going to have you arrested for that non-payment. And so, what we found was it mattered very much where you got your ticket. Some courts, some judges worked with folks and were very lenient, and others, they would have you arrested for contempt if they didn't like your answer to a question. Oftentimes that question is, do you have a job and why haven't you paid? Those two questions. And there was very little effort to really determine whether or not a person could afford to pay. And I should back that up and say, the Supreme Court back in '83 had a decision, and they said, you can't jail folks for court debt unless you determined that they could pay and willfully did not pay, right? And so that left it up to judges to make that determination. And most often what we see is that judges don't do a lot of diligence to determine whether or not a person can actually pay those traffic tickets and the really mounting court debt that comes with them. There's no forms usually that people fill out, determining, how much, what their income is like, what they owe, their number of dependents. Most often it's just a couple questions, and that leaves a person really vulnerable to arrest. I followed people throughout that year. Two people who were homeless. One person became homeless during that year, mounting, just crippled with court traffic ticket debt. It really impacts folks, their lives, their families, their ability to get to work, their ability to get to medical care, groceries. These folks are really living on the margins, and it's because of this traffic ticket debt, and really the reason that exists is because we have to pay for our local and state municipalities. We don't tax folks. Property taxes are low in Alabama, right? That benefits a certain section of folks. What we end up doing is making folks who are the most vulnerable among us pay for everything. Pay for these municipal courts, pay for all of these different departments that get parts of these funds, these fines and fees, and it's difficult to see these people struggle with it.
I saw a stat in the last couple of weeks, and I can't remember if it came from your report or not, but doesn't the median Alabamian pay more in like fines and fees and court costs and all that kind of stuff than they do in property taxes?
Yeah, I think that was probably in the Alabama Reflector series, that really great series. They had a 3-part series that came out recently. Ralph Chepico did a really good job with that, where he looked at the finances behind it and what Alabamians pay. And you're absolutely correct. In the South, but specifically in Alabama, folks pay a lot more in fines and fees, compared to property taxes than do people in other states. And what that says is we are placing the burden of running our government on the backs of the poorest among us. And if they don't pay, sometimes they just go to jail. I had a person that I followed that sat in jail for 6 days because this person did not show for a hearing to discuss traffic ticket debt. That's it. 6 days in a solitary cell, no running water, no working toilet. If you can imagine that, over traffic ticket debt. I mean, we talk about justice and equality, but I don't know how that's justice.
Right, and I want to talk some more about that, but just to emphasize the point, when we have it set up such that the median or the average person is more likely to, or it pays more in fees than in property taxes, we can obviously kind of guess, and this is borne out by the data, that you are more likely to have fines and fees the less income that you have, right? Because somebody at the higher end of the income scale is much less likely to kind of run afoul of the law in these ways that are going to accumulate fines and fees. And so it's on top of, the property tax really being so low, it is regressive in that, the more money that you have, the less that you have to pay in these other kinds of fines and fees, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt that what I witnessed in court was folks who would end up with, let's say they got stopped, one stop, they would get hit with 3 or 4 or 5 tickets for that one stop. Okay, each ticket comes with a fee, right? But it also comes with court costs, and oftentimes the judge will get court costs on each of those charges, even though it's one stop. So $109 court cost for one charge. They'll hit them with another one. That's another $190. It's real easy to watch, and I watched many times people end up with $1,000 worth of tickets in one stop. And most often they're regulatory stuff. It's insurance, tag, things like that. And those always, we know that those impact the lower income folks and people of color more than they do anyone else. Yeah.
Right.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
And so what people, I imagine, would say to you if they are in support of this system is that what this does is it's like a disciplinarian kind of thing. It dissuades people. What do you want, Eddie? If you charge people less in fines, then that's going to make them more likely to not have a car tag or drive around with a broken taillight. That's what they're going to say. Is there any evidence at all that these fines and fees that are, like you said, putting people in prison, and which is I learned about this a long time ago, but it's amazing that that's allowed, because theoretically the Constitution bans debtors' prisons, but we have people in jail literally because they can't pay their debt. It's just kind of unfathomable to me. Is there any data at all that suggests that these huge levels of fines and fees makes Alabamians less likely to speed, for instance, than people in other states?
No, I mean, a previous report we did showed sort of the opposite. So these fines and fees can create crime. We sampled a lot of folks several years ago, last year, in another report, and we found that more than half of them said that they will commit crimes to pay their traffic ticket debt because they don't want to go to jail. And so it's hard to argue against a fee, right? If you run a stop sign, there's a $25 fee, fine. You should pay that fee. But the court costs are so much more than the fee. And it's those court costs that keep rising. And so it's hard to argue that there shouldn't be a fee associated with the traffic infraction. But we should not be placing all of the burden of running our local and state governments on these folks through court costs, which just keep growing and growing and growing.
Exactly. And so how do how do judges who sentence people for prison, or in other cases suspend their driver's licenses for non-driving infractions but for failure to pay, especially, let's talk about the suspended license first and then we can talk about the jail, because are judges in Alabama, are they just not aware that working people have to drive to their jobs? I mean, how are they expecting people to pay for a fee that they have without a driver's license?
Yeah, I mean, some judges are better than others, right? I mean, like I said, it varies from court to court. Some judges are very patient with folks. I watch judges walk people through processes and do everything they could to keep from removing a license or jailing someone. Others were very quick to arrest, to remove licenses, and it really comes down to those split-second decisions. These folks don't have a lot of time in court. You might be in front of a judge for 2 to 3 minutes in a room full of people. There's not a lot of time for these judges to make those decisions, and all too often they make it really quickly. It's really difficult to see. And listen, these people, they lose their license, they're still going to have to drive. I mean, the rural parts of Alabama, there's no other way. You got to go to work. You're going to drive, and they're going to get other tickets. And so that's what you see, this doubling up, tripling up.
Right.
It's really crippling.
I mean, do they just pretend like they don't know that?
Or
do they pretend that they don't know that, or are they just actually like that stupid? Like that's kind of the two options that you have, right?
Yeah, we ask a lot of some of these judges, right? They become part of the issue. We put this burden on their backs as well, because we make them make these decisions, and so it's not an easy decision to make. There are laws against driving dangerously, and if you get tickets, you should pay those fees. But that's not really the issue. The issue is money. In the center of these discussions in these courts is always money. I sat through hours and hours and hours of court hearings, and it's always about why haven't you paid? How much can you pay? When can you pay? And that's what it comes down to. It's not about safety as much as it is just about
right.
pay us.
How do they justify sending people to prison when these are judges, these are lawyers, they've got Juris Doctorates. Presumably they know that the Constitution prohibits debtors' prisons. How is it that they're getting around this legally and then ethically?
Yeah, well, it's that Supreme Court decision I said earlier. The Supreme Court said you can't jail folks for court debt unless they willfully did not pay. And some of these judges are left to determine, well, what is willful, and so some judges will actually have a person fill out form, and they'll talk about their finances. They will not arrest on the first failure to appear. Sometimes they won't arrest until you've had 3 failure to appear. Other judges will have you arrested the first time you don't show for a review hearing to discuss your payment of debt. Some judges will have you arrested right in court if they don't like your answer. I've watched a man walk in and say, listen, I didn't pay because I work a fast food job. My hours have been cut. My rent's $800 a month. The judge just didn't like the answer and had him jailed and walked him out of court into handcuffs.
Wow.
Before he walked out of the room, he said, I'm going to lose my job. What am I supposed to do?
Wow.
I don't have a good answer for it, but we think that judges need to be doing adequate ability to pay hearings. And this judge, in an answer to me, a written answer, said, I just don't have the time to do that. I have too many people in my courtroom in a day, and I just don't have time to do that.
So are there the kind of final two questions, I think, are there any, you've said that there's kind of a spectrum. Are there any municipalities, district judges, whatever, the people that are in charge of this, that are really paving the way and kind of being a light on the hill on this kind of thing and showing the way that you can really do it? And then what are some of the prescriptions that Alabama Appleseed is making and pushing to try to right this ship and make it better?
Yeah, I did witness one judge specifically. She was Jennifer Weems was a judge in Jacksonville Municipal. She's now a district judge. But she really made an effort to not impact those folks directly. So she would hold the ability to pay hearings. She would have them fill out affidavits describing their ability to pay or their finances. She would not jail people on the first or second FTA, but only on the third FTA. So there are judges out there who understand, and there have been lawsuits in small places that have woken up some judges that this is a dangerous practice. On Appleseed, we believe that judges need to be holding those ability to pay hearings. They need to actually determine whether or not a person can pay before they decide to jail them. That's number one. Number two, there needs to be more transparency. Courts have data on race when it comes to the outcomes of municipal courts, but they don't make that data available. You can't get to it. And so we don't really know what some of the problems are. We suspect, because you look at national data and we see that Black drivers are more heavily impacted by this. But we need more transparency in that. Yeah.
Eddie, is there anything else that you wanted to that you'd like to leave the audience with on this issue before we let you go?
Yeah, read the report. Go to alabamaappleseed.org. The report's right there. Click on the report. If you want to get involved, there's a tab up top to do that. Please get involved. Help us. Share our reports. Share our work, and come join us.
All right. Appreciate it, Eddie. I second that recommendation. Read the report. It's good. Alabama Appleseed does good work. Thanks for taking the time this morning.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't understand how. I mean, I don't know. It seems like it just seems like you would, I don't know, feel bad, like ruining people's lives.
Right. And again, this is a supposedly liberty-loving, small government kind of environment, and yet we harass people with fees and fines until they are thrown into a cage. It's really disturbing, and I appreciate Eddie and the team at Appleseed for doing their work and getting this report out there. And I hope that there was some progress this past legislative session around the debt-based driver's license suspension. So hopefully, that's a sign of more change to come.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.